So we're disempowered by confusion and fear and addiction. We could draw this in so many directions of how that can manifest.
Right.
But we are disempowered by confusions where we're not in touch with the richness of the moment. We're not in touch with the richness of ourselves. We're not in touch with what could happen in non-resistance, right? Which is often something good.
Hello, Elad.
Hello, Ilona.
Very nice to meet you.
Yeah. Lovely to see you.
And let's get into it.
Yeah.
The podcast is called Awakening Now. So it's all about awakening. And to start with, I ask everyone, I'm going to ask you, what is your definition of awakening? How do you see it?
Okay. Yeah, these days I mostly don't prepare. I often don't prepare for things. But actually to our conversation today, I found myself thinking a bit about it. So that was interesting, that to the conversation where in a way it would least be to prepare, but I had thoughts, but it felt good. So I thought a bit about it. Yeah. And yeah, anything I say will of course, it will at best be helpful. It will at best be helpful. But some of the ways that came to me, maybe to start with today, is something like awakening is that which we cannot do it, and we also cannot get in the way of it. But seemingly we can. But yeah, so that could be a way. Couple of other thoughts that came. I guess they're kind of on my heart to bring into the conversation. Another way would be to say awakening is that which would not be satisfied with any concepts or any limited explanations or views. And I'm not saying that's not it either, but that might point. Yeah.
And in your experience, what was it the awakening from? Awakening to?
What was the awakening from, you're saying?
Yeah.
So the initial shift, because there's been quite a process, the initial shift, which was at age 17, it was like a shift. It was like ideas and identity could never be related with quite the same way anymore. I'd say it that way. So there had been a kind of very passionate search to understand. For me, a lot through philosophy. I was reading a lot of philosophy, but on my own, and really genuinely trying to understand the world. And then there was like a hitting of a limit, I would say, kind of a sense of hitting the limit of what can be caught with words, which then it created this shift in experience and perspective. Yeah. Yeah.
So what happened when you were 17 years old? What happened? You were reading books and...
What happened when it happened, or what happened after, or?
I mean, when you were 17 years old and you said you had this first big shift, what happened?
Yeah. Well, so I could talk in terms of what came before, and I could talk of what happened in the moment, or if I say a bit of what came before. So it was this reading. I can say that there was trauma in my family, which maybe we will get to. I don't feel I don't feel it doesn't feel like it's most important to get into, but
Mhm.
also it doesn't feel like I wouldn't. So we'll see.
Mhm.
But there was some trauma in the family, and I think I can see a correlation between that and in some ways a period where I guess I became in some ways less mainstream. And then I also happened to meet friends who were, I would say, more creative types, a bit more out of the ordinary, more creative types. And I kind of got more into yeah, into start to think more imaginatively and openly, both to play more with imagination and to study more what's going on, psychology, philosophy, but from curiosity on my own. Um, and yeah, and that summer where this shift happened, I was out traveling on my own for the first time in that way. I used to climb a lot, and I was like on a climbing vacation on my own in Gorge du Verdon. It's an amazing place in France. And I had just had a kind of a breakup, very teenage style, teenage feelings and dynamics breakup, and kind of going into that. I remember sitting on the train and being on the way to France and like letting go of there was like a letting go of a lot of this oh, she doesn't want me the way I wanted her to want me, or does she, or what's going on with that? And there was like a relief in a letting go of that. So I think that was a factor, and I think this whole process with philosophy was a factor, and I could think of others because really, when the moment where it happened, something kind of just happened. But these things feel relevant.
Right. Mhm.
Um, Yeah, and when it happened, like there wasn't anything spectacular. It was just I don't even remember an exact moment, but I do remember like a day and a sense of the light and the space, the place, the camping. It was the camping ground in La Palue in Verdun, and like a sense of I remember there was a lavender, like a lavender flower, a lavender that touched me and the light and but yeah, it was like a very, very soft. Um, mm, yeah, I'm going to say the word homecoming, but it's again very soft homecoming, which was beautiful. And then if I just kind of just say very shortly, there was after that there were much later, actually not only a few years ago, I kind of came to know this is a typical pattern because I didn't know. But there were like a few months then of kind of honeymoon.
Mhm.
I I was much more content. I was more kind. I was more simple. A lot of the kind of ego dynamics went way down. Um, yeah, and then a lot of stuff came back, basically. Yeah, and then I could say it's been like decades of process that I could get to all kinds of things, um, all kinds of things. Yeah, and recently Liberation Unleashed, I guess within the last 1.5 year or something, Liberation Unleashed played an important role in my life and my process, and it does today. So yeah, maybe we'll get to that also. There's so much that possibly we could get into.
Very interesting and fascinating when young people have this kind of realization and how their life can be different. I mean,
Yeah.
for me at 17, I had no idea.
Mm, mm,
I was oblivious. That's so
mm.
funny.
But then I
It's
remember
normal.
in your last interview, I think it was one of your last interviews with, I think it's Amy, her
Uh-huh.
name.
Amy
I
Johnson, huh?
remember, yeah. And I remember you said that you had these experiences where you would kind of get out of ordinary awareness, ordinary form, and then you would almost look to it, like when you were alone. Is that right?
Yes,
So
but I had no idea
something
what
was
was
going
going
on.
on. It
Yeah,
was,
something was going on.
for me, it was weird and kind of unsettling. And
Right, right.
It's just not I loved being on my own, expanded. But I didn't consider that anything normal or something even significant. I just thought I was a little bit weird in that way, but maybe everyone was.
Right. Yeah. And I get a feeling it's connected with what happened later, but in ways that was kind of underground. You know, you're sharing there. Yeah. Yeah. You know, for me, there was in many ways, I would say that it's like almost all difficulties. Who knows? Maybe even more. You know, who knows? But it's like a lot of practically every ordinary difficulty of life came back, and I also wouldn't exclude can come at any time today, in a sense. Yeah. And at the same time, there is a sense of before and after. Like there is a sense of, but actually it took a long time to be able to say stuff like that with words. That's like the feeling when it happened was kind of like, don't talk about it, almost like I remember thoughts coming, but they're not necessarily exactly precise, but almost like respect God and don't open your mouth and and dirty this preciousness with words that might become egoic or limiting but there was also a sense, no, that's not quite it either. It's just hard to talk about, right? I'm just sharing it as an example of how there was a process. Well, like there was and is a process of how do you live and express in a way that's helpful, kind, clear. Yeah.
Practical sense.
What?
In a practical sense. I mean, we still live life of everyday human. I'm no special.
Yes.
Taking care of things like everyone else taking care of.
Yep, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. So I see my mind kind of goes to a few of the things that I imagined might be interesting to talk about. And at the same time, I'm kind of just also curious and open. Yeah.
It's lovely to have that curious and open mind.
Yeah.
So good to acknowledge that. Such a gift to know that.
Yeah.
Like the energy or the life force can flow in many ways, in different ways. It doesn't have to go in this square or tightness or kind of habitual thing. There's enough room for flexibility and just being present and watching it bubble up, whatever is bubbling up in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, part of the I'm gonna use the word learning. It feels like learning. Maybe we'll find another word later. But part of the learning seems to be it's like learning to be open for more and more aspects of experience or life in a way. Yeah. So another of the thoughts that came to me, I was sitting this morning in a cafe, and I just had the impulse to write a little before, and then another of these kind of ways, the impulses to say about awakening was, awakening is that which doesn't banish anything. Yeah, and which doesn't mean, of course, no boundaries, no all that kind of stuff, but it's a quality. And that seems to be a process ongoingly, right? That the ongoing learning to kind of embrace, be kind, accept more, in a sense, of what's there. Yeah. And yeah. And also this dynamic between how it feels like it, like I would say for me, in one sense, in one sense, it can feel like something I do, right? And then in another sense, it's this again and again, this discovery that it's happening by itself. It's that return. But there is this dynamic, I feel, for me, of these perspectives, and I feel like they both have a role to play. I also think, like, I have a sense that for me, a lot of ordinary life, my guess is I'm feeling as a pretty normal self person, basically. And basically kind of with the full catastrophe, as they say, with the full package, right?
The
The
full
good,
catastrophe. Oh my
good,
God.
the good, the bad, and the ugly. But there is that, there is that sense of a lot of the time, just I guess more or less just feeling like a normal person, thinking, feeling, choosing, acting, right? And my sense where I am now, and that comes with an openness that it might change. But my sense where I am now is that that's healthy, and that's kind of that, that's healthy and functional. And the thing that's different is that at the same time there is this openness, like it can shift to the perspective where it's felt and seen, the sense that, this kind of just falling into that which happens by itself, which can happen with different degrees of depth and, or qualities. Yeah. Yeah.
Integrated functional human.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Let's talk about your work as a clinical psychologist. Is that right? How did you get into that? What?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, I'll preempt that with saying that in my story, and I have an imagination that that's common, in a way, after a shift, in some ways, our patterns, we could call it our karma, if we like that words, or just our patterns, our habits of, thinking, feeling, acting, the whole way we kind of are connected in the world, in a way, it just continues, but with some kind of opening that makes possible that another kind of flexibility or fluidity or listening within it. But the patterns don't, for me, my guess is for many, it's a gradual process. The patterns changing or the karma changing is a very gradual process. And I kind of came partly from partly academic background, always with a very conflicted relationship, by the way, with it. Not just meaning I also was a kind of a dreamy kid, and I was slightly dyslexic, so a little bit, which created difficult experiences quickly with school system, which makes you more kind of look for your own way. But I also was just kind of a little bit independent-minded type, dreamy. Anyhow, I came from a background where it was very natural that you're going to study, and also thinking and analyzing was quite natural. Yeah, so there was an orientation to that, and yeah, so I started studying philosophy and mathematics at a certain age. Actually, when the awakening happened, or well, the shift, I'm kind of
Whatever words, yes, sure.
When something happened that made a difference, exactly. I wanted to be a mountain guide. I just wanted, you know, to be in nature, simplicity, and I loved it, and it was a huge part of my life. And then I got kind of badly injured, which kind of was part of what, in a way, started the more kind of shadow coming up again, and a lot of that, and also led to me more going to orient again to academia, part to studying. So I started with philosophy and math, and my idea was that to do that was kind of yoga for the mind or for awareness. Like I didn't mainly really think about the topic itself, but more how is that gonna enrich somehow clarity. And it did in some ways. And then fortunately, my body, I did get much better in the body, and I could climb again. And then I took a year off from the studies, and I was full-time climbing. It was one of the best, most fun years ever. And at some point, I did want to study again, and then I had a feeling I want to move towards, I felt I don't want to just continue. I want to move towards something more in somehow more heart-based, like closer to something more down to earth, more personal in a way. Yeah, and a few options were on the radar, literature, and I went to psychology. And I was partly inspired by a book called Zen and the Brain by a neurologist. I think he's called James Austin. That the part that inspired me most was just his description of experiences. Like he was really good at, you know, doing a very close, intimate description of the changes he experienced with Zen practice. So that really was actually what drew me most. But I thought I'm going to go and study psychology to kind of get more of that.
Not Zen.
What?
Not Zen.
Well, later Zen came as well. That's a good point. Later Zen came as well. But somehow part of my orientation was I'm going to be also studying. And, you know, also, I guess an orientation of I'm going to have some profession. I could think about that more, but, you know, that was what happened. And later there was also Zen training. When I came to psychology, I was pretty disappointed pretty quickly, because most of what I found, and not the least in cognitive science, which is where I was looking for these Zen, you know, kind of the Zen-like things, I pretty quickly felt I got what was really enriching for me. But where I did find I could be enriched more was in the world of therapy. So I was at that, I think I was 23. And I'd never been to therapy. It was not part of my life. But then at that age, I actually, because I was considering to drop the studies, I went and talked with the study counselor. And she was a person who's really capable of listening beautifully and reflecting beautifully. So I had basically one of my first experiences ever of somebody who can really, really, really listen beautifully and reflect beautifully. And it was like, that was a new chapter starting. It was like, you know, kind of going out and new colors, because if you haven't felt really seen and reflected in a beautiful way, I think that's a profound part of the human life, at least for many of us. And so for me, that was big. And then not so long after that came my first therapy, which I was lucky or whatever, you know, but I had a therapist whom later I found out is like a Dzogchen practitioner. That's a Tibetan style of Buddhism that's very Zen-like. It's like very down to the bones of just what is here. If you just relax, what is here by itself, right? I don't want to narrow and say that's Dzogchen, but that it points a little in that direction. Anyhow, I was lucky, and that was enriching. And then I pretty quickly started working simultaneously with the studies, with doing psychotherapy in a crisis center where we could get guiding and be trained up in Denmark. I lived in Denmark at that time. Yeah, and then that just became, it basically became part of my life, and it rolled and rolled, and yeah, and I could say so much about that, but the short version is, if I'm just trying to get the core of it is, yeah, there's been a process over years really, of really taking the best there is to get from the worlds of, not saying I have the best. I'm sure there's a lot I don't have, but getting a lot of the good, right? Of what is there in, the worlds of psychotherapy and the different psychotherapeutic traditions and so forth. And I do feel there is a lot of richness. And at the same time, getting uncaught from the ways I got caught in some of the limitations of that, which I today will think about is a little bit like every religion. Like in a way, in some ways, it becomes a bit like a religion. There are ways you're a little bit, and you buy into it. Right? We partly buy into it from the place in us that's scared and wants to belong and wants to be sure and wants to be safe from harm, right? And that part in us, for all kinds of reasons, and that part in us can feel very tempted and supported by any system or group that supposedly will give us safety from, kind of feeling much more, well, yeah, I guess what just comes to me now is volatile to also the ways that pain and trauma can come about also between humans. Yeah, so so I feel it's been a big process with that, and really, I feel it's mainly over the last year or so, I guess. It's been going for a long time, and I moved to Israel 9 years ago, and both what came before and moving to Israel took everything in a much more let go and do it openly direction. And in the last year, even more letting go. But it's been this process over years, kind of flirting with art, between art, performance, spirituality, and psychotherapy. And yeah. Mm.
Very interesting.
Mm.
Yeah, I went to study psychology and got disappointed pretty quick too. My
Yeah.
idea was that I'm gonna learn about the mind.
Right.
But it was a theory, it wasn't learning about the mind in practice. It was good
Right.
training for memory, like memorizing stuff.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. My sense is that if you are lucky, so to speak, if you either read good stuff of psychology or psychotherapy, or if you're lucky and you meet, I'm just going to say it in a simple way, like good psychotherapists, we can talk about what that is,
Yeah.
right? It's kind of like if you're lucky and you meet, good people, you happen to meet good people within the fields of awakening or non-duality or so forth, or books, right? If you meet good people, you'll meet people that kind of treat you with kindness and openness, and they will invite you to explore. And they might hear, and they might also have things to say, whether pointers, perspectives, stuff that they don't put it on you, right? They don't say memorize it or this is the truth, but they will say, listen, this way of describing or speaking or listening did something for me. I've seen it do something for others, right? And so my feeling is that my feeling is that seen and taken this way, there is a real richness both within the world, say, of psychotherapy and psychology, and say within the worlds of, awakening, non-duality, and so forth. And everywhere there is also the risk of something else. Like there is a risk, yeah, that's, I guess, is my sense. Yeah. And it's kind of something I feel I wish for an enriched conversation between people in the field of non-duality, awakening, and so forth.
By
People,
connecting.
yeah, I wish an enriched conversation, because I have a sense there is real potential for enriched conversation. I mean, it's not new what I say. There are many people who say that. I think there is more to happen there. And there can be slight tendencies, is my feeling, for devaluation sometimes, going both ways.
You're
Like
right.
where it's the not good on the other side that's being pointed to, instead of a curiosity for, say in the psychodynamic psychoanalytic literature, there's so many, there are rich descriptions from people who really did take time to listen a lot, of how do you describe the way that people relate, or, or the way that can be very enriching, right? But then from their field, I feel very often there, I'm just kind of throwing it as it's coming up. There is like something about taking the inquiry deeper, like deeper in the sense of, not necessarily deeper in the emotional sense, which is really important and profound, not necessarily deeper in the emotional relational sense, but deeper in the sense of, yeah, what's going on at all? What's here? What's this? Right? Yeah. What's in control, and so forth.
Yeah, it's nice to see that awakening to this no person thing, that there is no person separate from life, making life happen, or running the show, whichever way we can describe that. Doesn't negate that character traits or this humanness, or that there is so much work to do with this human aspect. Like it's all included.
Yeah.
I mean, when you see that everything is running by nature, or the laws of nature, everything is running on its own by itself. Nothing is separate from that one movement or that one energy. That doesn't necessarily solve all the conditioning that makes us suffer. And that's where the psychology comes in.
Yeah.
And not just psychology, there are so many
all kinds of things,
ways to look at what is going on. The main thing is to start recognizing these patterns as they are appearing, becoming conscious of them.
Yes.
Recognizing the mechanism of how it works, so it can self-adjust.
Yeah.
So the awakening is literally holding the space for all this to be seen freshly, without being so much entangled or so identified with these patterns.
Yeah.
Like for me, when I saw that there is no Ilona running the show, it was just, nothing happened in that way, but something fell off in a huge way. And then I could learn different ways to be, different ways to look at stuff, my own stuff.
Yeah.
And working with people and having conversations with different people that find you, what would you say are the most fundamental issues that a human has? Oh, you mentioned safety. You can go into that one. It's huge. Safety, needing safety, feeling unsafe. But can you describe what you find? What are the most fundamental issues?
What are the most fundamental issues? Oh, I'm happy to think about it. I'll just say before I say it, and I imagine you and I, we will vibe easily on this, that when I meet people, what I first and foremost start with doing is I try to meet, I as best I can, I come with openness and heartfulness, and I'm just kind of like, who are you? What do you wish? Like, what's going on? Right. And then I just start attending together with them, asking questions or sharing what I see and feel, and about like what seems to be going on, what seems to be important for you, right? What seems to, if something bothers you, what is it? And then later on, it might be what seems to cause it or perpetuate it, or right. So just to mention, you know, that I really find it so important, that open-ended quality, right? Like, which has to do with being connected to what, you know, we can call it the heart, but like just having that open, heartful, and from there we are open, right? And then if I go further, well, one way to describe it is you know, I have the quick answers, which would be based on just saying quick what I see most often, but I try to not just give
Let's
that
try. Let's
up
hear
for a
it.
moment.
Yes, let's hear it.
It'd be more enjoyable, I think, or maybe more helpful. Well, one way to say is we're disempowered by confusion and fear a lot, and probably also addiction, not little. That might be three good words. So we're disempowered by confusion and fear and addiction. We could draw this in so many directions of how that can manifest.
Right.
But we are disempowered by confusions where we're not in touch with the richness of the moment. We're not in touch with the richness of ourselves. We're not in touch with what could happen in non-resistance, right? Which is often something good. It doesn't mean it, as we know, it doesn't mean that there might not be a lot that's painful and rough and, you know, scary on one level and all that. And at the same time, there is, you know, I don't know if I have ever had an experience where something good in some sense didn't happen with some letting go of resistance, like some kind of letting, some kind of, you know, so there is this potential of, yeah, there is this potential of noticing, what am I getting stuck in? What is the story that I'm getting stuck in? Or what's the, yeah, what make it unavailable for me to have the experience that there is richness, or that there is some kind of, yeah, movement, yeah, love, right? And a deep level of it, it feels to me, connects to all the relational stuff, right? So a big part of where we get stuck is around our confusions and woundings, you know, defenses, trauma, and so forth, relational patterns, right? That to a large extent we inherited, right? Or we, you know, but it's very normal. It's all very normal. We have our particular variation, which might be more or less intense in some ways, but it's just very normal. But there seems to be a very, like, that's an ongoing process. And you know, I can definitely say for me, it's for 100%, it's still an ongoing process. And everybody I know close up, it's still an ongoing process. I don't know. Yeah, I wouldn't exclude, I don't need to speak about what's going on that I don't know about. But that's the way it is for me and those I know close up, is there is this ongoing process of a more and more whole, we could call it kind of the release of the heart, or the homecoming of the heart, which has a lot to do with seeing through how am I caught up in, you know, intergenerational, but also on society level and world level patterns of trauma, of misunderstanding, of addiction, right? And seeing and letting go. And then love can be there. Then a sense of freedom can be there. And that's this ongoing process.
Spot on, I would say.
Yeah.
Like we are born into this plane or planet or structure, whatever word. We're born into this, and it's been given to us. I mean, I don't remember asking to be conditioned in the wrong ways. I don't remember asking to get my parents' traumas into my system or whatever happened generations back.
Yep.
Some people say they have a near-death experience and they get the information that they came here because they wanted to work. For me, that is just a story. I don't remember that. So from where I am, I'm innocent. I didn't ask for it. And here you go. You have to deal with all this stuff, and nobody gave us instruction manual, how to be a human or where it's all coming from, and just running around blindly looking for some knowledge that somebody can give us a little glimpse of hope that it can be sorted, and it can.
Yeah, right.
But until you know, you don't know. You can be running around like all life like this, being a slave to the patterns that are not even yours.
Right. That's right. That's really important. Yeah. Yeah, there was a period where I was watching some of these kind of near-death experience. I find it fascinating, and I've known a few people close up, particularly one who had some strong experiences in that direction and so forth, and I haven't myself. Personally, I find it kind of fascinating, meaning I'm happy to, I don't know, there are many things I don't know about, and there is no reason for me to try to know, I mean, I can study something if I'm curious, that's good, right? But it would not be there's no need for me to assume anything, right? And this is just something that comes to me from what you're saying is I have a sense that, again, within the field of like awakening and non-duality and so forth, there can be a tendency. Some people like to, when we're using words, some people very much like to they in a way use the words of materialism, meaning they like to describe everything going back to the brain and genes and that kind of stuff, right? And other people, whether, is it their personality? Is there that taste, just taste disposition? Is it experiences? But they might be more leaning towards, say, something shamanic or something mystical or something, like that. And yeah, what I feel like sharing is that to me, it feels helpful just to basically to acknowledge that yes, for me, it's all just perspectives, right? But it doesn't mean they're not perspective that can matter or inspire, right? Or we can be curious and yeah, all that. Yeah. This is me personally. I sometimes find it sad almost when I meet people also kind of post-awakening, who, in my words, basically their taste, their leaning of their thoughts is very much to the kind of materialistic. And then they will speak of anything mystical as if it's kind of, it's bullshit. And I personally don't, that's sad to me. Kind of as from a different direction, sometimes you'll meet people who are very kind of, I'm going to use the word, say, new agey, but whatever, they're very much in that direction, who sometimes have a slightly devaluing attitude to science, right? Or to medicine, to science. That's for some, that's not helpful either. So yeah, again, this is me again, wanting to use the space you have invited me into, that I wish for us the openness, and in a way I wish for us that, to the degree our senses, I don't know, to the degree our senses in some sense mystery, then to honor that also with an openness, right? because the mystery includes somehow everything. It includes science and psychology, and it includes shamanism, and it includes the conversations between them. Yeah. Yeah.
I look at there are 4 aspects of our experience, like physical, true body, physical things, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And they're not separate things. They are like a tree that has got roots and trunk and branches and leaves. You can't take one part and leave the others. It doesn't work like that. It's one thing.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So we can't negate physical and lean into spiritual, for example, and then say, oh, I can't find the body. There is no body.
Right.
It's not true. Because at the end of the day, you are eating, you're going to toilet, you have to wash, you have to take care of family and dogs and whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are human.
Yep.
It's all included.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, then you find sometimes, I'm thinking of a friend, a very dear friend here. You find sometimes some people they've only come to associate words like spirituality with woo-woo. They've basically come to associate those words with not respecting what can be seen and not staying close to your direct experience, but living in fact, that's what they have associated spirituality with, right? They've come to put an what is it called, an equal sign between spirituality and living in fantasy rather than what is directly experienced or what is direct or what is helpful on the conventional level of life, right? And I can certainly understand that if that's what we mean by spirituality, I can certainly understand saying, no, thank you. That's not for me. Right? It might be fun to see a science fiction movie, but not more than that. Thank you very much. Right? But to me, that's a very impoverished use of the word, a word like spirituality, right? Like because a more rich word would point to things like the sense of mystery, right? Or the sense to which anything we think will in some sense dissolve, and and into what is this, right? And I might include somehow the sense to which that when resistances fall away, and resistance have to do with misunderstanding, somehow there's a sense that love shows up, is my sense, right? And this love might be, yeah, I don't know. I feel I'm venturing a lot with saying that. Like I'm kind of asking myself a moment, is that too much to say? But but I think it is my sense that's the way. Like a love that doesn't banish anything. A love that can include in it the sense of how painful the painful things are, how heartbreaking the ways that we are, cruel, or all the dark stuff. It can include the heartbreak about all this dark stuff. Right? Yeah. Yeah. So spirituality as a word that points to that is for me, I think I would wish for anyone that's a lot to say. So I'm keeping it with a little openness, but I think I would wish for anyone more connection to that sense, and that the word gets healed. I think it's the poet David White, or maybe some other poet. He speaks about healing words, like bringing them back to their, their beautiful use. So.
From what you said, I think that this spirituality it's a mental thing. It's a mental spirituality, because mostly people live in the mental world, isn't it? Like we don't normally, we don't notice so much the environment or sounds or colors. It's just what's going on in the head, all these ideas, concepts, and everything. And that there is this concept of spirituality and with all the imagination.
Right.
In the mental world, it's not true spirituality. True spirituality, the way I see it, is connectedness to that center of sacredness, of this mystery within, where are no more words. There is just this love.
Right.
So this spirituality, as this word is being used today, is mental.
Yeah, when it's being abused, it's mental. And like a lot of abuses, abuse has a history of abuse, meaning those who use the word in that impoverished sense, it's partly because that was what they saw. Right? They saw that use. So I agree.
Because the mental world is the hugest world, the mental part in everyday humans' experience. Like we escape into the mental to avoid to feel emotions. Trying to fix situations out there, not knowing that it's just a reflection of how we feel, and it's the feeling that wants to be felt, not a situation that needs to be fixed. And all these addictions are also from the confusions, just to trying to get yourself feel better by making yourself feel worse. Isn't it? And the fears are all the ideas about tomorrow, or the after, or the future, where something can be felt that is unwanted. So we escape into that mental sphere, and it gets like 98% of attention. So this awakening, the way I see it, this shift of that attention out of the head, out of the mental sphere into the whole. And where there is the physical is accessible, emotional accessible, spiritual accessible, mental is still there. It's not disappearing, but it's not eating all attention anymore.
That's right.
Would you give an advice for a spiritual seeker, somebody that is looking to awaken? What would be your best advice as you see it now?
I actually wrote a few things down this morning in the cafe. So I feel like sharing them. I'll share them quickly. I wrote a few things. I wrote I very rarely read. Now I'm getting, for a moment, I'm like, how am I going to do this? I wrote, see the image and story concerns. Like I have a sense many times with seeking, we get stuck in how we are concerned to see ourselves and that others will see us, and how we want to see ourselves and want others. Like that it feels to me, and other stories, right? So to notice this power of that, I think it's really big in the seeking, and then kind of go to or look into what is it that's concerned, right? What is it that's concerned? I'm just going to say quickly these things I wrote, and then we'll be fluent together again. I wrote, keep it deeply personal. And I had an example. In a moment we can speak about don't take it personal, but I'm going to start with keep it deeply personal. And I wrote an example with imagine soiling your pants in the street, like, shit, poop, like how strong would that feel? Like if you can be in the inquiry or in the looking with the same sense, like something, get it to that place. It's really personal, and then at some point you get a sense of how the next, also let it be seen that it's impersonal. Like you see how it's whatever is, it is. But I have a sense it's many times important at the base to get to that place of what's really personal about this for me. Because if we're not in touch with that, it can easily stay kind of more intellectualistic and defensive level, and we don't even know what's driving it. We don't know the underlying emotions and concerns that are keeping us far away from looking more. So that feels important. And then I wrote, don't take anyone too seriously, particularly those who seem to know better or seem to be certain. And with a caveat, don't not to confuse this with not having admiration or respect or devotion or being inspired, right? But yeah, I get a sense that I've had that in my life, and I think that can be a pretty big trap, like to take to have a lot of our energy go to somebody or something where we imagine that that's the answer, and then actually our main energy is going to try to understand that or be that, or right, rather than back to what's here. Yeah. Yeah. And thing more I want to say about that is this sense that, there is this saying that suffering stops. And I'll be honest and say, well, I guess again, it depends on how you use words, but suffering has not stopped for me. Like I can feel sad and I can feel ashamed and I can feel all kinds of things that are not comfortable. I can feel insecure. And again, my sense is that almost anyone I know close up so far, which includes certain guides or people people who seem to have had some significant shifts, we can still have a lot of the human range of emotions and experiences. It's held lighter. It's experienced differently, and this difference is important. But I kind of I think that there can be a danger in this attraction or idealization of a state where there is no suffering, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The idea of happy ever after.
Yeah, and like almost that it says something bad about you if you experience, upset or right? And so,
I mean, if my cat dies, I'm upset.
Yeah.
And I cry. And it's sad. And it feels
Yeah.
horrible. I don't go around, yay, all is well. Wonderful.
Yeah.
It's inappropriate.
That's right. Yeah. 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 And yeah. And to me, some of the like if we take Jesus as a figure, I didn't know him personally, but I'm not speaking about the religion. I'm speaking about the figure, the story. To me, sounds like a very inspiring figure, right? And you hear him going through the full range of, really the full range of human emotions and so on. So, yeah. And partly also and out of caring also. So if our process takes us to a place where we care less, well, at the very least, to feel a lot into what's going on, like why. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Elad. Such an interesting conversation, and I think we can talk more and more.
I have the same sense. Thank you, Ilona. Really appreciate it.
And do you have a website or a way for people to contact you if they want to have some sessions or what you offer?
I don't have a website. I'll send you my email. People are welcome to write there.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. And your books and things that happen through you have expanded my openness in my life. So thank you.
Thank you. Oh, and everyone who watches and listens, thank you so much. And leave a comment, share with a friend, subscribe, and whatever you do, stay well, stay safe. Bye for now.